happy to be here.
Yeah, I think so.
Excited to be here. Welcome to Michigan.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Hey, how are you, man? The sun came out for you.
How are you, brother?
I like that. No, I did. I've been here for 2 days, and it just opened up. I go, who's in town?
Should I go next?
I'm doing it again. God bless you.
It's a pleasure. We love you.
Thank you. Hey, young man. Thank you, sir. Great.
Show on the road.
Take care of him.
At the banquet table, America, I am Dr. Alveda King. I have a dream. It is in my genes. Today, I introduce to some and present to all the next president of the United States of America, Mr. Herman Cain. Please welcome him. God bless America.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being here today. Because this is a day that we have an opportunity to explain 999 without 6 attacks at one time, if you know what I mean. Some people have asked me, how did you come up with this? What do you know about economics? Earlier in my career, when I was at the Pillsbury Company, one of my jobs at one point was director of business analysis, where I oversaw economic analysis for the Pillsbury Company. Some people think there's just pepperoni between these 2 ears, but I used to work doing econometric analyses. In the early 1990s, I was asked to serve on a commission with Jack Kemp, the Economic Growth and Tax Reform Commission. We studied the fair tax, we studied the flat tax, and came to some wonderful conclusions about what a good tax structure ought to be. Let me introduce, before I go any further, my senior economic advisor, the co-architect of 999, Mr. Rich Lowry, out of Cleveland, Ohio. I am happy to be in Detroit, but more importantly, I'm happy to be in America, where this is where opportunity is born, and this is where dreams can be achieved. I know that you've heard a lot of disinformation about 999. Don't believe it. Look it up for yourself. This is why I want to review that before I get to the opportunity zone. First, 999, we had 5 simple principles that we wanted to satisfy. We wanted it to be simple. We wanted it to be transparent, such that you would know when and how you were going to be taxed. We wanted it to be efficient. How many people here like spending money to get your tax returns filled out? That's not very efficient. It costs us $430 billion a year to file and comply. We wanted it to be fair, not according to Washington's definition of fair, but Webster's definition of fair, which means everybody gets treated the same. That's fair. And we wanted it to be revenue neutral. The 999 plan throws out the current tax code. That's where we start. We have been complaining about it for decades. We know it's messed up. And so because we put a bold solution on the table, some of my fellow contenders have accused me of being too bold. This economy cannot wait. It is on life support. We need a bold solution, which is why we put together 999. The other thing that 999 does, it levels the competitive playing field. You see, on that first 9, a business can deduct purchases, capital investments, and net exports. What that means essentially is it makes goods and products produced in the United States on a level playing field with everybody else in the world, because we take out many of these embedded taxes. The third thing that this approach does, it expands the tax base by adding in the national sales tax of 9%, the third 9. Some of my opponents in this Republican race have said, why do you want to give government another mechanism to tax us? My response is, I want to take away the 10 million ways they have now to tax us. I'm not worried about one. I'm worried about the 10 million in the current tax code. And one of the reasons that they aren't going to turn 999 into something else anytime soon, you can never say that they will never change it. There are two reasons why they're not going to change it anytime soon. Number one, I'm going to be the president, and I'm not going to sign it. They keep forgetting that. And number two, because it's visible. You know what it is. You understand it. And if they start talking about raising it for no reason other than they are still overspending, you are going to let your voices be heard. Visibility of this plan is one of the biggest deterrents we have to keep the politicians honest. Now, the opportunity zone feature has been in our analysis all along. But just like I accused some of my opponents the other night of not having read the plan, we now have proof they didn't read it. If their staffs had done the proper job and read it all the way through, they would have discovered what I'm about to share with you. Because, first of all, 999 captures revenue to equal existing tax revenue from 5 sources. The payroll tax, you don't have to pay that anymore. Corporate income taxes will be captured in the first 9. Personal income taxes, everybody rates can go anywhere from 10, 15, 20, 25, 30%. You capture that in the second 9. It also replaces capital gains taxes and the death tax. Capital gains. What if an investor wanted to do something with this building behind us? And what if they wanted to spend $10 million to turn it into a mall or a restaurant facility or a destination facility in this city? Under 999, they would be able to deduct that capital investment in the year that they make it and not have to deal with depreciation schedules, as they call it, which are punitive to businesses. The fact that capital gains goes away, it allows that entrepreneurial spirit in this country to be financed by people with money to get together with people with ideas. Imagine every one of these facilities that we are surrounded by having an entrepreneur and an investor getting creative in order to be able to do something with these depressed economic properties. That's what built America. We need to renew and unleash that same spirit. So here are 2 of the features that my competitors didn't get to when they didn't read the plan. Number 1, how do we deal with the poor, those that are at or below the poverty level? We already had this provision in there, and we still raise the same amount of money. If you're at or below the poverty level, your plan isn't 999, it's 909. Say amen, y'all. 909. In other words, if you are at or below the poverty level based upon family size, because there's a different number for each one, then you don't pay that middle 9 tax on your income. This is how we help the poor. Another way we help the poor is that we get this economy going so we can let people find jobs. For economically distressed cities, Detroit has an unemployment rate over 20%. And there are other cities just like that. and it's getting worse. So the opportunity zones will allow cities like Detroit to qualify for additional exemptions relative to the first 9. Right now, in the first 9, you can deduct purchases if you're a business. You can deduct capital expenditures, net exports. But for those cities that qualify as opportunity zones, you will also be able to deduct a certain amount of your payroll expenses. So you will be incented to put people to work. The other thing about the opportunity zone is that it just doesn't apply to certain kinds of businesses located in the zone. All businesses would qualify for those kinds of extra exemptions. Now, one of the things that I believe in is empowering cities to help themselves, empowering workers and individuals to help themselves. This is not an entitlement program. And so the cities will have to step up and remove some of the barriers that are within their city limits, such that if the cities do what they can do to help themselves, we will have the 999 legislation so structured that they will get additional benefits. And so it starts with the national opportunity zone, that if you are on, at, or below poverty, your plan is 909. Now, some people will say, if you're at poverty, then you're not concerned about that first 9 anyway. That's not true. I know a lot of business people that are barely making it. And so, yes, they will get 0 for the middle 9. And, yes, they will get special deductions if they're in an opportunity zone. So all of the critics who want to say that this plan is not this and not that, I invite them to take a look at an article that was published just a couple of days ago by one of the most renowned economists on the planet. He worked with President Reagan during the Reagan administration. He is currently head of his own company. I'm talking about Dr. Art Laffer. He's currently head of Laffer Associates and the Laffer Center for Supply Side Economics, co-author with Stephen Moore of Return to Prosperity. And he wrote an article that was published in the Wall Street Journal the other day that refuted all of the false claims made against 999 the other night during the debate. And before I tell you what he concluded with his own analysis, it never felt so good being shot at. Never felt so good being shot at. Because, as Alveda King said, it's because they didn't think of it first and they don't have a credible plan. To the accusation that a new sales tax could be raised in the future, Dr. Laffer responds, so could any other tax. So what makes that one any different? To the accusation that it is not revenue neutral, Dr. Laffer concludes, I believe his plan, Herman Cain, would indeed be static revenue neutral, and with the boost it would give to the economic growth, it would bring in even more revenue than expected. And to the accusation that this will not generate economic growth, Dr. Laffer points out, output will soar, as will jobs. Tax revenues will also increase enormously, not because tax rates have increased, but because marginal tax rates will decrease under the 999 plan. Bottom line, folks, 999 means jobs, jobs, jobs. Let's renew the economy of this nation. This is the greatest country in the world. And we have people that are apologizing for America's greatness. As as your president, I will never apologize for the greatness of America because of the spirit of America that built this great country. Ronald Reagan, one of our greatest presidents, used to describe this nation as that shining city on a hill. But in the last several years, that shining city on a hill has slid down to the side of the hill because of this struggling economy, because this administration is weakening our military, because of foggy foreign policy around the world, and because of a severe deficiency of leadership. I believe that the American people are saying loud and clear that they want to move this shining city on the hill back to the top of the hill where it belongs. And I believe that we can do that in November 2012. There are two things that some people haven't figured out yet. Some of them are still trying to answer the question, why is Herman Cain doing so well in the polls? He doesn't have the greatest amount of money. A lot of people didn't even know who he was. I can tell you what's happening that they don't get yet. Number one, the voice of the people is more powerful than the voice of the media. You're the people, and you're listening. Secondly, message is more powerful than money. America is hungry for solutions and not more rhetoric. That's what they're paying attention to. Not only our 999 jobs plan, but also our approach to many of the other crises we face. And we have become a nation of crises. But the good news, we can fix things. The American dream has been hijacked, but we can take it back. I know that because I have lived my American dreams, and then some. And so have many of you. And ever since my first grandchild was born in 1999, and I looked into that little face for the very first time, and the thought that went through my head, which it had to be coming from God Almighty, what do I do to make this a better nation and a better world? This journey has unfolded for the last 12 years, and I am convinced that the spirit of America is going to renew America. And I am convinced that the American people are ready for a problem solver in the White House and not another politician. Ronald Reagan, who I refer to again, describes this thing we call freedom as something very fragile, very delicate. And if we allow it to get away from us, we might not be able to get it back. Reagan reminded us that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We can't pass it on in the bloodstream. It must be fought for and protected, or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our grandchildren what the United States of America used to be like when men were free. I'm not going to have that conversation with my grandkids, and I don't think you want to have that conversation with your grandkids. In the fourth verse of the Star Spangled Banner are some words that people rarely recite. On all of our currency, it says, "In God we trust." But right in the middle of the fourth verse of the Star Spangled Banner, it says, "In God is our trust." And that's why we are going to take that shining city on a hill back to the top of the hill where it belongs. This is the greatest country in the world, and we are going to keep it that way. Thank you for being here. God bless you.